It's got well plants, great, indeed. As long as I stay away from that mic, I think, or that speaker, I think I'm okay. Class 3 hacking. Anybody here have a class 3 item? No? I'm the only one? Okay, we got one. Anybody here have a class 3 item they're not willing to admit to it? Yeah. Does anybody here have no idea what I'm talking about? Okay, at least we're honest here. Class 3 items are items controlled by the ATF, such as silencers, hand grenades, short barrel weapons, fully automatic weapons, things like that. In other words, the fun stuff. So this is the disclaimer that would naturally have to accompany something like this, because you can't talk about firearms in public without letting people know that you're not responsible for whatever stupidity they may try to accomplish. And to make sure that we're all aware of just what kind of mood we're talking here, this, no, never mind. It's not a serious presentation, although the material that we're covering is serious. This is my fair disclosure and sponsor. So in the tradition of great presentations everywhere, and this format will probably look familiar to a few of you. This is me. This is who I work for. This is what I do for them. I do it so that I can afford this sort of thing, and this sort of thing, and occasionally this sort of thing. But to be honest, mostly this sort of thing. I actually went to college with the understanding of my parents that the only reason I was going was so that I could afford a better quality of beer than my father. So while hanging around at various other hacking conferences, or security conferences, since I'm not really a hacker, I happened to notice a strange thing when discussing with certain people the concept of firearms, and that was that a great many security people seem to have a distinctly keen interest in things that go boom, which was okay, because you typically think of hackers as, you know, pencil and geeks. I mean, not the hackers that we all know and love, but the classical computer geek type guy is not a gun nut. It turns out that some of these people have more money than they know what to do with, and they invest them in some pretty exotic explosive technology. Myself, for example. And if you look around, you find that there's a lot of them around, which brought me to the concept of, well, maybe we should talk about this at a con instead of the usual technical stuff, mostly because I suck at the technical stuff and you wouldn't want to hear what I talk about. But I do know a little bit about this. I won't claim to know everything there is to know. Definitely, this laptop is the biggest piece of shit.
You want to try one of your class 3s on this?
So I want to try one of my class 3s on this. Yeah, this would be a good day for a grenade, I'm thinking. But it's better. Yeah, it's better than me trying to use my Mac. That would be just comedy. Now, the funny thing about guns in general is that these, which look really scary and nasty, to people like me, are nothing more than these, which is the reality of the situation. Because you can kill somebody with a soup spoon. But make no qualms about it, they are dangerous. Some people think that they're this. And chances are, if you see these guys, you're probably going to be followed shortly by seeing these guys, which is going to lead to some terminal issues. Gun fatalities are not a laughing matter. There are a bunch of stupid people out there with access to firearms, because this is the land of the free, and basically if you haven't done anything too stupid yet, we'll let you have a gun. Knock yourself out. Unfortunately, they don't self-police very well. They tend to police other people, which is bad for the hobby, bad for the professionals. Oddly enough, Louisiana seems to be the most dangerous state to live in if you like firearms. I don't know why. I've been down there a bunch of times, and everybody seemed to be handling them quite well. Since this was 2007, I'm guessing it had something to do with Katrina, maybe. It was a little freaky after that. So as a result of all of that violence and gun death, we have these things. And these people, who are not as bad as a lot of people would like to make out. If you treat them nicely and professionally, they will do the same to you. They will not mistreat you. If you are breaking the law, they will probably break your onus. So it's good to have laws, some laws, not too many laws. Because we all know that there's this thing called the internet. No giggles, come on. You guys don't know Ceiling Cat?
Watching you.
It is.
He's watching me what?
Frequently. Watching you what?
He's watching me what?
Polish my gun.
Oh, not yours. My own, maybe.
And we know that there's other things that are out there. That's my cat, by the way. This is the only photo in the entire thing that I can claim copyright on. This one's mine. And there's these crazy guys. Why you would try and jump a moped over a pool, I don't know. But if these are the kind of people that we allow to have access to guns, like this, then chances are we're going to see a whole lot more of these. And that's not good for anybody. So I think that some gun control is a good thing. And most people think that you can't even own something like this. But the reality is that you can. You can own something like this. You can own something like this, as long as you have one of these. This, for my philatelists, did I say that right? Philatelists, whatever, stamp collectors. This is an actual US stamp. I know it's not fallacious. So. Flagellums? That's a small animal, I think. This is a stamp. If you get one of these, you will actually see the corrugated border, and it's got redding on it so that it's, I guess, canceled or whatever. But they give you an actual US stamp. So when they call it a stamp tax, and we all remember that from high school history, the British and the stamp tax, they're talking about an actual goddamn stamp. And which, why? But it's $200. So it's important that you get it, because if you don't, the ATS comes and they do bad things to you. This is why you're getting it. This is a cross-section of an automatic sear, which is the thing in a lot of cases that they're interested in. This is the part of the weapon that makes it go bang, bang, bang when you hold the trigger down. They really like these to be registered so that they know where to find you in the event that they have problems, or in the event that, as the crazies say, the zombies attack, they take away all our guns, and that's the end of the United States. But it's just a sear, it's just a stamp item, like a lot of these things. It's just a piece of mechanical stuff. So the funny thing about sears, though, is that you can buy them online or at gun shows without registering. So that whole control thing that we just talked about, where you're supposed to have a stamp to get these, the ATF really doesn't do a good job of letting us know what we can and can't buy. It's almost like this dirty gray area where they want you to get in trouble, which is why the whole concept of Class 3 weapons and stamps and stuff has this reputation of, you know what, I'm just going to leave it alone. It's dangerous, I don't want to bother with it. But it is doable. I've done it. This is probably not the best way to go about it, because if you run around with one of these, chances are you're going to get in trouble. You'll be hanging out back with your friends one night and go, you know what, why don't we drop this in the AR and see what happens? And like that, there'll be dudes in blue with badges. Unless you're out in the middle of nowhere, like West Virginia or something. These guys show up, so I gotta do this right. Interesting face, huh? The guy's my exact twin, and this is in my town. I have no idea who he is. I do have black guns like that, but I don't wear a badge. Some people think that this whole concept of gun control is a very, very bad thing. That every time we ratchet down guns, the last time that we changed gun control, not counting the Brady bill, which got then thrown out again, or expired, was in 1986. We'll talk about those changes in a second, but a lot of these things were good. They were for good reason. Because people like this, running around with Ma Deuces, is a really bad idea. We're all born equal. I mean, that's one of the foundations of our country, is that everybody is born with equal rights. The problem is, we don't all grow up that way. And this, I don't know if you can make out the detail, but this dude who is very proud of his shit, he's got a Guitar Hero guitar, probably a knockoff Kmart Les Paul or something, I don't know. And then guns, So this is kind of frightening to me, and I think that having a little control for this gentleman is a very good idea. If not,
That looks like you too.
No. No ink on that boy. Okay, so the reason we have the initial form of gun control in this country, which was 1938, is because of these guys. Because they were running around with grenades and explosives and automatic weapons, taking Chicago by storm. They caused a lot of havoc. They didn't, in terms of modern warfare and violence, these guys didn't do shit. They killed a bunch of people, mostly each other, like modern gang warfare, and then a bunch of politicians went, oh God, we gotta keep that from happening again. Not, we gotta keep that from happening to civilians again, because that would make sense. If you can keep it from happening to civilians, that makes perfect sense. But this guy is a criminal. Is forcing you to have a stamp to own that weapon going to keep him from owning that weapon or using it in any way he sees fit? No, he's a criminal. It doesn't accomplish jack shit. This stamp does nothing more than keep poor people from having access to the same weaponry that middle-class citizens and upper-class citizens do. Now, I'm not big on class warfare, but that sure as hell sounds like it to me. When you make it impossible for normal people to own this kind of technology. Maybe it has something to do with some weird view, but criminals don't give a shit. So they're going to keep having access to the same stuff anyways, because they're criminals. But you can, if you buy one of those stamps, buy one of these, which is a really cool one. It's a Modus. Unfortunately, you can't buy some of the other things that we used to be able to buy. And like I said before, poor people in general are not going to have access to the same class of weaponry as the other people. But we're trying. Due to the 1968 and 1986 laws of gun control, we are now forced to only be able to buy automatic weapons, machine guns, which were manufactured before 1986 and already registered in this country. So there is a very small pool of automatic weapons that a person can buy. So now we're in a situation where anybody can buy a stamp, but you can't buy an automatic weapon because there's none for sale. This is the pricing. And if you bought one of these in 1985, you paid this price, despite the fact that it was fully automatic. Now, if you want to buy it, you have to pay that price, and somebody has to be willing to sell, which isn't that often. Even gunbroker.com only has 3 listings as of yesterday for fully automatic weapons that are worth buying, not counting the crappy AK-47 that somebody ran over with a truck before deciding to sell it. Sorry, refreshment break. That's a good time for the first t-shirt too. What do we mean when we say class 3 weapon? Anybody?
Guns owned by the ATF.
No.
Controlled.
Controlled. Close.
Any weapon that regulates one weapon or 2.
Oh, I give up here. Don't ask me to run a class. Okay, gun sales in the U.S., and this will really freak some people out. I don't know if it should or not, but when I first saw this, and come on, Adrian. Kim, come on.
Oh.
It's his first time.
No, it's not. I was his first.
Huh?
This is the statistics for gun security checks, for gun background checks, from November 98 to May of 09. And you'll notice that it has this weird hopping motion. All of the peaks here, this is December. This is your Christmas gun sales. I know, I'm a Christmas gun sale, I buy at least 2. But if you run the math, and you do some conservative estimating as to what's really going on here, like for instance, 50% of this is new guns and 50% of it is resale, you eventually arrive at a figure of about 60 million guns over this 10-year period, which equates to 1 gun for every man, woman, and child of gun registering age over the decade. And we basically already owned a gun, all of us men at least, so we doubled the amount of firearms in circulation in the last 10 years. That's a lot of guns. But they're all hobby guns for hunting, pheasants and so on. All those black guns I see at the office are not, no, they had those before. Another disclaimer, just to remind you that I'm not responsible for any stupid stuff you do, because we're getting to the funny parts. Okay, what can you do with guns in general? Guns and other things that are associated with it. Well, you have to be 18 to buy a long gun. You have to be 21 to buy a handgun. You have to be 21 to buy a Class 3 item, which a grenade happens to be. Most people don't realize that. You're not allowed to be mentally defective or a criminal to own any of this stuff, which is a good thing, right? We don't want criminals to own guns. Where the hell did they get them then? I think the FBI must be supplying them. The strange thing about gun law in this country is that gun law is not a federal program. It has federal components, but just because the ATF says that you can own a hand grenade or you can own a machine gun doesn't mean that you can run out and get one. Cabela's does not sell them. More importantly, you have to get the permission, the written permission of your local law enforcement, which is your local sheriff or your local police chief. If they don't want you to have one of these things, you can't have one. That's the law. We'll get to how to fix that little problem in a minute. Worse, there's some really strange local laws. New Jersey, for instance, has a law in its books that says you cannot use a hollow point, which is a type of ammunition, in the commission of a crime. Yeah, that's going to help. More importantly, a lot of people in New Jersey, including law enforcement, think that the law actually says you're not allowed to own or carry hollow points, which is completely not what the law says. A normal gun person in New Jersey protecting themselves with their fully licensed and registered firearm in their home, because Jersey doesn't have a carry law, they suck. You think this is one of the states where you need it the most, right? And they won't let you carry it concealed? Come on. But anyways, you are allowed to have hollow points, but it's just a strange law. And there was another law. What did you want me to? Hang on, I gotta look up the other reference that I was thinking of. It's important, these little trivia things. Two more. Almost there. Does this sound familiar? Man, got ahead of myself. Oh, there we go. Okay. Another fun fact that is at the federal level that is very important for you if you own a Class 3 item, but may not be obvious, is that you are not allowed to transport said item across a state line without getting permission from the ATF. This is something I didn't know. It came up in my research, and I'm like, oh, really? That's kind of, you think that they would make that a, put it on the form or something, since they let you have this thing now, and they're like, well, yeah, you enjoy your machine gun. It's like, are they waiting for you? Across the state line, and possess. No, they just don't care. They're federal agents, they got a lot on their minds, and nobody really cares. They're not intentionally trying to trap anybody, but if you are not aware of the rules, you may inadvertently stumble into them, and there's a lot of them. So while I say it's easy to own this stuff, you want to make sure that you're in contact with some people that really know the rules, like lawyers and gun nuts and gun enthusiasts, before you get into this sort of thing. Okay. Because problems with this stuff abound, just like anything else. I have broken more shit trying to hack guns and ammunition than I probably have trying to hack computer systems. And it's a lot easier to replace a motherboard than it is to replace a cylinder on a 6-shooter. So Gun Facts 101. Only slide with writing on it. You're allowed to own silencers, automatic weapons, short barrels, blah, 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 blah. Guns, you can make stuff. You can make pen guns. Is that cool? You can actually make a pen gun. You have to register it, but you can do it. Provided you follow the rules. Always talk to a lawyer. Yeah, okay. This is the fingerprint form. You got to do this. There's 3 forms you have to do. You have to do the fingerprint form. You can do this yourself. I thought you had to go to law enforcement and have them do it. Turns out, interesting, law enforcement doesn't do fingerprints anymore. Not like this. They do electronic fingerprints. The ATF doesn't want electronic fingerprints, they want physical fingerprints. You can't get them anywhere. So it's either do it yourself, which they accept, or don't get it. But doesn't that seem a bit odd? One of the other forms, which also has a note on it, this is the 32, whatever. This is the one that says you're a U.S. citizen, not a criminal. And note this thing up here, trust. This is very important. We'll talk about that in a second. Form 2, speaking of trust, this guy, I don't know. Trusts are useful for passing weapons down in inheritance. If you have class 3 items and you die, your relatives have 30 days to refile for a tax stamp. They have to get the tax stamps over. So if you have 10 items, that's $2,000 that they're going to have to cough up within 30 days. How long does it take the ATF to process the forms? Anybody? Guess. 6 weeks at least. So that whole 30 days thing, it doesn't look real friendly. Well, you can, it turns out, build a trust, which isn't that hard. It's kind of like a business entity, kind of like incorporating, but not really. It's a good thing to have a lawyer, but you don't have to. It's just a form of paperwork that you file. If you have a trust, I'm sorry, that's the third form, my bad. If you have a trust, you do not have to get the permission of your local law enforcement. You file your paperwork with the ATF directly. You do not need the sheriff's signature. You do not need the police chief's signature. They may not like you for bypassing their authority, so you may want to check on it regardless. But it is possible to own stuff in jurisdictions where they don't want you to own stuff. Talk to a lawyer for sure. Third form, this is the one that's like you're not mentally defective, you're not an alien, what have you. So the whole death thing. When you die and you have this in a trust, the trust gets assigned to your beneficiaries, children, stepchildren, cat, what have you. It's just assigned. There's no transition with the forms, there's no forms to be filed. So it seems like it's a pretty good deal, but it is a formal setup. You do have to follow certain rules if you're going down the trust format. A shitload of people do it this way because they're worried that at some point, if you try and re-register the guns as an inheritance, that by that time we will have taken away your right to own those guns. And everybody else will be grandfathered in, and since the trust doesn't re-register, they'll be okay as well, but anybody trying to inherit during a time like that would be denied by the ATF. Could it happen? Sure. Is it likely to happen? I don't know. This place is crazy. So death isn't necessarily the specter that it should be in those cases. Okay. This is a silencer. Is there anybody out there who wants to debate me as to whether this is a silencer or a suppressor? Good. You get a lot of people calling these suppressors. It is in fact a silencer. The reason it's a silencer is because on the ATF form, it says silencer. I don't know if that's right or correct, I don't care. The ATF says it's that. What are you gonna call them up and say, you're wrong, I wanna register a suppressor instead? It's the ATF, you don't argue with those people. Not without a lawyer present. This, on the other hand, is a flash suppressor. It's supposed to make the muzzle flash of your weapon smaller or less noticeable. I understand why that's called a suppressor and not a silencer, because flash silencer doesn't make any sense. But some people like to argue this, I guess, to make themselves seem important. Some people argue it just because they don't know. Well, I was told it's called a suppressor. Fine, that's cool. Let me show you this ATF form. It says silencer. Oh, okay, I guess it's a silencer. This is like a holy war thing. You may have heard of some holy wars. Anybody know what this one is? This is my editor, the greatest editor on the planet, versus whatever editor you use. VI is the best. I will swear to that until I'm dead. That's your editor of choice at any rate. And you thought there wasn't going to be geek shit in this. Silencers are like health supplements. There's a shitload of them on the market. That's a silencer. Suppressor, flash suppressors. This is the late night TV commercial multivitamin supplement that will let you live forever of the gun world. Everybody wants you to buy their suppressor because it makes your muzzle flash smaller. And they all do about the same thing, which is diddly. It's a big cone of flame. Unless you put something in front of it to block it, it's still a big cone of flame. And they come out in a different pattern, but it's still a big cone of flame. There are some suppressors that will make it a little smaller or rearrange it so that it seems smaller from certain angles, but it's fire. So these are fun to play with. And you can manufacture these, you don't need a stamp. You can have all kinds of weird designs, make it look like Star Trek. One of my favorite headlines. Can you do that? When I was in the Air Force and I went to my first arms show, way back in 1980, something or other, we were talking to the boys from, man, that's a long time ago. Anyways, one of the big military conglomerate consulting gigs, and they were talking about computer security, and they said they sold a model of keyboard with 3 ounces of plastique built into it. I said, that's going to make password failures pretty difficult. But when it comes to hacking hardware, as opposed to software, there's one key difference, as any hardware hacker will tell you. If you're playing with the physical world, things can be dangerous. If I want to do stuff to this motherboard, chances are me, being the klutz I am, I'm going to ruin the motherboard and have to replace it. That's easy. I can go to Newegg, click, I click on shit, and I get a new motherboard. If I'm hacking a gun, things may not go as well. So you do have to be careful. This is, again, talk to people who are experienced. It's great to try stuff on your own, but make sure you're going down a well-trod path that you understand. Or you might not be around to tell us about it at the next con. Hacking ammo can be especially interesting. You can do all sorts of really cool stuff, but there's technical things, just like in computers, that you need to know. Ruger sells a model of pistol called a Vaquero, which is a rockin' kind of pistol if you got one of the early models, because you can take a 45 long Colt, which is a form of a shell and a piece of ammunition, and you can jack it up to like 1900 feet per second, which is just stupid fast for that particular round. It puts it in the realm of like a 44 Magnum type operation. But you can only do that with certain frames. If you do it with other frames, you get that. Guess where that metal went? Grenade effect, probably some of it went into his face. Scars are really cool, chicks dig them, but you don't want to end up with them like this, because you may end up, like this as well, if not dead. Modifying any piece of hardware has certain inherent risks. There are horror stories about people who don't know how to handle weapons getting their hands on SKSs, AK-47s, and experiencing what's called a runaway condition. That's where you load up your 30-round banana clip because it's really bitching and you just got it and you've never used it before and you want to see what it's like to rip through 30 rounds. And you go out to the range and you pull the trigger and you go through 2 or 3 magazines like this and the weapon starts getting dirty. And then you put the 4th one in and you go to rock and roll and it doesn't stop. And it empties that entire clip and you have no control over it whatsoever. Since you have no idea what you're doing with this weapon, the weapon climbs up, maybe falls backwards, whatever. It's definitely pointing in a direction you don't want it to point in. It may point at somebody else. Very bad. Somebody who is skilled in the operation of weapons like that can deal with that situation. It is possible, but that's not a desirable condition. Something to be aware of. You don't do that intentionally. And if you do any of this stuff illegally without the proper tax stamps, you can wind up in PMIDA prison. Does everybody know what PMIDA prison is? Yes? Pound me in the ass. Fed pen. Some people like to do videos of their modifications, whether they are legal or illegal, and post them on YouTube. If I was the ATF, I would have a department, probably consisting of a room with 2 dudes in it, maybe a chick for flavor, going over these videos. Just tracking them down, calling them up, and going, yes, Mr. Johnson, we just wanted to check on your stamp registration. No? Okay, thank you. It's good promotion material, digging these people out. I'm glad they do it though, because in some cases, this is the only place I've seen certain mods. The rest of it comes by word of mouth. In fact, the best source for any modifications that you're going to make to a weapon, or on advice for which version of a weapon to purchase for modification, that's very important, is your local gunsmith or my local gunsmith. Because there's a tremendous amount of back knowledge that goes into this hacking of guns. You can't just go up to Cabela's and buy an AR-15 and go home and expect to use a drop-in sear. It won't work. You have to buy a certain model of AR-15, it's probably older, or you have to do a lot of metal work yourself. Unless you can do that metal work, you're going to want to take it back to Cabela's, get your money back, and go buy the right one. Experience helps. If you're talking to people that have never done this before, chances are you're about to burn through a whole lot of cash and probably cause some trouble. This is a P90. This is a kick-ass weapon to start with for modifications. The internet has completely ruined it for gun hackers because every kid in America knows how to turn this weapon into a fully automatic weapon. It's the easiest thing to modify, which also means it's most likely to be in the room when the ATF comes in to get you. But you can buy the components and the stamps and to get short barrel, full auto, whatever you want. You can make other modifications to it besides tag stamps. That's actually a little later in the program here, but this thing kicks ass. I love it. I mean, it's a stupid round. It's like a round that couldn't decide whether it wanted to be a rifle or a handgun, but it's a lot of fun. And what's the most important thing about this? Stargate. The AR-15, M16, definitely highly popular with the modders. And the Beretta 92FS, 9mm military issue knockoff. Not knockoff, it's the civilian version of the 92F, which is the military version of the side pistol now. You can do a lot of fun things with this.
Damn it. Sorry.
It's all right, man, I'm grooving.
Hello.
One of the laptop feet stuck to me. Where were we? Oh yeah, this thing. Sorry. You can do a lot of fun stuff with this if you know how, and it doesn't take a whole lot of mechanics. This was used in Broken Arrow by Mr. Yes, thank you. Please do not shoot at the nuclear weapons. Again, if you do this without the proper authorization, tax forms, what have you, it's off to Pimada with you. The downside to doing weapons modification is to doing hacking. In hacking hardware, we're all trying to get to the cheapest possible zone, right? Everybody would like to have a cell tower. It used to cost $150 million. Then it cost $150,000. And I think it was on EL the other day. They were talking about a backpack model. I'm guessing costs less than 15 grand to be your own cell tower, at which point you can do all kinds of fun stuff. But automatic weapons are expensive. So you can get into weapons mods and some class 3 things for $200. But if you want to do serious things, you need an automatic weapon. That's the big money, as they say. And if you want to do the really fun stuff, grenades, rockets, yeah, that's a lot of money. Plus, every time you use one of those explosive devices, that tax stamp just went up in smoke. It'd be fun to have a grenade. Say you paid $300 for it, and you had a tax stamp to go with it. You don't get a tax stamp for the case, you get a tax stamp for the grenade. So as soon as you use the grenade, the stamp is now completely useless to you. Same with rocket launchers. Too bad. It was a lot of fun, but there's people with money to burn like this, and they do. We've all seen Red Jacket, right? Interestingly, it's not necessarily the entire weapon that is controlled by the ATF. Frequently, it is a piece of the weapon. Most commonly, the sear. Everybody knows the automatic weapon sear from the AR-15 M16 because it's so commonly referred to. But it can be other parts of a weapon for other things. For example, on the Uzi, it may be the bolt. On the P90, it is the funny cam thing that, I don't know, might count as a sear, might not. I'm not Mr. Dunn, terminology person, so I just know which part. I can look at it and go, yeah, that's the control item. With the control item in hand, you can go over to a friend's house and use it in his gun, because you've got your paper with you that says this is legal. You cannot leave it with him, although technically, according to the federal law, you should be able to loan it to him as long as he brings it back. But regardless, you can't permanently change to that weapon without refiling. But you can play with different features in different gun sets. This is useful. My favorite sentence in the 1968 Act is this: including grenades, mortars, rocket launchers, large projectiles, and other heavy ordnance. We're talking bombs. You can own bombs. Yeah, your sheriff's going to sign off on that one. Modification of ammunition, as we discussed, is one of the most common forms of gun hacking that there is. Almost everybody who's a gun nut does reloading, and we all have magic recipes for what rounds work the best. I reload because I need subsonic ammunition for silencers. That makes them the most effective. A good silencer with a good subsonic round basically sounds like, well, it sounds like, you remember those old red paper cap guns? Pop, 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 that's as loud as it is. But this is a pellet from an air rifle with a BB in the front of it. The purpose of the BB is to make the pellet expand better when it hits its target, because expansion is key in inflicting lethal damage. I find it hilarious that they did this for pellets and that you can buy these over the counter, because if you put this into a 9mm or a 45, what you get is a round that goes through bulletproof vests. Don't do that. That's an illegal round. You're not allowed to do that, kind of like dum-dums. You take a bullet and you cut a cross in the tip of it. That's called a dum-dum. It was very popular in the gangster days because they didn't have fragmenting ammunition. They had standard ball ammunition. This makes a fragment. Your good friend here is not going to get up. Very bad for business. This is not something that you need to do anymore on any sort of even an educational basis, because you can buy stuff over the counter that does the exact same thing, better, faster, cheaper. That's a Glazer safety slug. They cite these for self-defense. They're not going to get up. But you can buy all of these rounds. You can make all of these rounds if you want to. It's your thing. You can do a lot of this without any tax stamp. You're not allowed to sell it. You're not allowed to use it. Well, actually, you can use it for self-defense, but you can get in a lot of trouble. Did I have a slide for that? Yes. Modifying bullets and carrying them for self-defense. I can make, like my Colt 45 that I talked about with the super fast bullets. That's probably a really, really effective self-defense weapon, other than the fact that it's single action, which is beside the point, but it's a round that I made. So if I shoot somebody with that in self-defense and they die, their lawyer is going to argue that I designed that round to be intentionally lethal. Sir?
Does that apply to all class 3s, right? So if you have a short rifle or a short shotgun that's licensed and you're doing in states with a standard ground law, do you know if there's any case law out there on that?
I don't. This is what my Master Smith told me and what my lawyer told me. They said, and it has nothing to do with class 3. It's did you shoot somebody?
Right.
Use factory rounds. That's the safest way to ensure that you don't wind up in PMIDA or in debt because of something that you did to defend yourself. I'm pretty sure there's case law on it.
I was just curious. I haven't done a whole lot. I mean, I would never use a fully automatic weapon to defend my home.
That'd be kind of silly.
I wouldn't want to kill my neighbors.
Yeah.
Right? And shotguns work better anyway.
Yeah, as anybody who does combat for a living will tell you, fully automatic weapons are kind of pointless. They're entertaining.
Right.
They're great for fear and crowd dispersal, but if you're going to assault a house, you want a semi-automatic weapon. Fully autos are stupid.
Hypothetically speaking, though, if you punch 17 holes in someone to be able to your front door just by holding the trigger down. I mean, I'm sure.
That's an impressive feat of gun control. I mean, even I would be.
I mean, I'm sure you would probably end up in the wrong due to that. But do you know if there have been any documented cases of that where someone like,
Overkill.
they had a legitimate,
I don't know, but if someone rocked in and you were holding that in your hand at the time, and that was why it happened, it's a pretty good defense. It was in my hand. Sorry, dude. Wrong time, wrong place. But better would definitely be, see, because if you own an automatic weapon, my argument there as the expert witness on the other side is going to be, as an owner of one of these weapons, you should have had to trigger discipline to put two in his chest and stop. If you owned it without that, then it seems like it's kind of careless, but I don't think that that's going to go real well. Legal people don't understand these subtleties. But what we're referring to is if you're using hollow points and loading your own ammo for additional velocity, additional expansion, making your own hollow points for additional expansion, additional fragmentation, very bad stuff. Besides, the best hollow points that you can possibly use, and this has been proven repeatedly through gel tests, are the federal hydroshocks. Use what the feds use. That's why they use them. If there was a better round available for knocking people on their ass, the feds would use it. So this is my summary gag. Not a math geek, I couldn't even tell you what that is, but I know it's like a double summary or something. You can own a short barrel weapon. You want the Mad Max shotgun? You can have it. You can even make it. You just have to register it. Want a silencer? You can have a silencer. You can have 10 silencers. You can make a silencer. You just have to register it. Want a machine gun? Same thing. Making a machine gun, little different story. Can't make machine guns. You gotta buy them. Pen guns, cane guns, you can make them. You can buy them. Just have to be registered. As we were talking about this a couple days ago in prep for this con, I was thinking to myself, there's probably an executive market for those. And if I made high-end pen guns, I bet Larry Ellison would buy one. First, he'd want his katana out, though. Must have stamps. No stamps? Back to PMIDA. There are other mods you can do besides the most common taxed mods, some of which are really cool. I've seen dudes make magnet-driven magazine counters that tell you how many rounds you've got. That's a cool electronics geek hacking thing. Slap in the mag, gun goes back to 40, pull the trigger, gun counts down to 0, beeps, whatever you can make it do to help you with magazine controls. That's a commercial unit sold by the manufacturer of that particular gun. That's a homemade unit, as witness to the fact that it's on there sideways. Radio Shack. There's this other wonderful program out there called the CMP, which is a civilian marksmanship program which was originally designed to ensure that the populace was both armed and capable. Like Switzerland's government, where everybody serves and you get to keep your weapon. I think it's Switzerland. The peaceful country. That's what this was designed for. Unfortunately, over the years and decades, it's been watered down, corrupted, what have you, but it's still out there and there are still some good things that you can do with it. For instance, you can buy military surplus weapons. They have to sell them to you. Unfortunately, they don't sell them as cheaply as they used to, and they don't get them as much as they did before, but they're there, and you can buy them through them cheaper than you can get it through Cabela's. The cool thing about the CMP is that it's the only place in the world. How many gamers in here? Gamers? We love our badges, don't we? Give me some badges in the, help me out here, Battlefield. This is the only place where you can get a presidential, a government level commendation. That's this thing. Distinguished rifleman, distinguished pistol shot, distinguished international shooter. If you go and you participate in the program and you score well enough, you can score actual medals that mean something. I mean, I don't have one. I want one. I might be lucky enough to get one someday, but that's some impressive crap. That means you know how to handle a weapon really well. And anybody can do it. So, with that being said, I think that's the last one, right? Yeah. I think it's a good idea to have some of this stuff just in case the zombies ever come up, but that's my personal feeling. Besides that, it's fun. Any questions? Any more questions, I should say? Next year, we hope to do this and have a demonstration out in the boondocks somewhere with real toys that we would like to invite everybody to. Make sure that you make that well known so that we get pressure, we get to do it.
Unofficial, but we do want to have a actual shooting event next year. So those of us who like guns can get invited to shoot this year and have it all the time.
Okay. Cutting time wise. Oh, rock.
Brian. All right.